for Virginia Enterprise Zone. And let me get my mouse. So just as an overview, you might have been with us during our previous webinar, but we do like to review our Virginia Enterprise Zone map across the Commonwealth of Virginia. The shaded areas are those localities. Those are those 45 or listed 45 zones, and the shade areas are the localities with a enterprise zone. It does include 21 cities, 34 counties, and 12 towns across the Commonwealth of Virginia. As a review on our grant year 2024 summary data, we like to share with you the investment that was made. And so we dispersed about $13.68 million in grant funds to 36 job creation grants and 117 real property investment grants. That did leverage approximately $231 million in private investment of qualified real property, and also resulted in the net new jobs created of 2,957. We will go over this a few times. We want to make sure that you're aware and remember that the timeline for our program and application process during the 2025 General Assembly session, funds were appropriated for grant year 2025. The calendar year 2025 is our grant year, so jobs created in 2025, as well as real property that was placed in service in 2025, are eligible for this grant cycle, where applications are due April 1st of 2026. And again, that submission, all documents are submitted via the easy application submittal portal or submission portal. They are due by 11:59 p.m. on April 1st, 2026. I will say, while they're due by 11:59 p.m., we do try to be available until 5. And then, of course, all applications and documents must be submitted by that deadline for the application to be considered on time. This is just a screenshot. We will be reviewing some of those job creation grant application processes and screenshots a little bit later in the presentation, but just wanted to share with you what that looks like. And so the job application, you can see right here, you will submit it. Just as a note, when you go to submit that, and I'm sure Kate may review that later as well, you do have to do that at one time. You cannot save the application and come back to it at a later time. For that purpose, we do include sample applications that can be filled out with all your information. We suggest you print those and use them ahead of time, as well as to work with your CPA for the attestation process. Also, all the required documents to be uploaded are included on this portal. We're going to go over all the qualifying factors for the job creation grant. So of course, first, the company does have to be located within the enterprise zone boundaries for you to apply for the job creation grant. The positions must be permanent and full-time. They cannot be temporary or contract positions. And they must be for an indefinite duration. So they have to have been hired with the intent of being there indefinitely for the duration. We do come across companies that do have positions that might telework or remote work. In that case, the employee is required to report to the work within that zone on a regular basis. We consider on a regular basis to be at least once per month. And then sometimes the hours per week is asked. So positions must be normally scheduled to work at least one of these, which could be a minimum of 35 hours per week for at least 48 weeks, a minimum of 35 hours per week for the portion of the taxable year in which the employee was hired. So they may have been hired halfway through the year. We'll go over prorated grant amounts a little bit later. And then also, if they have standard fringe benefits that are paid in a salary position, they must work with at least a minimum 1,680 hours per year. Other qualifying factors does mean that they have to be net new positions to Virginia. They cannot have moved from one location in Virginia to another. So from outside a zone into a zone, those are ineligible. New or existing businesses who have created grant eligible jobs over base year employment levels. So base year is either of the calendar years prior to your application. So for jobs created in 2025, the base year is going to be either 2023 or 2024 positions. We'll go over that spreadsheet just a little bit about how that is calculated. New businesses will typically always have a base year of employment of 0. So they will not have any base year employments if they are a new business. And then you must meet a 4-job threshold. So there is a threshold associated with the job creation grant. It does not kick in until that 5th job or that 5th qualifying job is created. In addition, other requirements include that the employer must pay at least 50% of the eligible employee's health insurance premium. And the employee may not, they may sign a waiver, they may not accept it, they may have insurance through a spouse or some other capacity that they take as part of their insurance plan. However, the company does have to be part of the benefits package and has to be offered to every employee. All employees must meet a minimum wage requirement. We will discuss in just a few slides. There are some restricted positions that are not eligible for the job creation grant listed here. Very quickly, there are personal service, food and beverage, retail, units of government, and nonprofits except for those listed with the NAICS code. You can find a full listing of eligible and ineligible positions in the job creation grant manual. Told you we talk about those minimum wage requirements. So the upcoming grant cycle for 2025 is for jobs created in 2025. So under the Code of Virginia, our program takes the minimum wage as of December 1st of the previous year of the grant year. So in this case, it's going to be December 1st of 2024. And at that time, the Virginia minimum wage was $12 per hour, which is higher than the federal minimum wage. So this table gives you the calculation of the wage rate thresholds for grant year 2025. All businesses who pay at least 175% or $21 per hour are eligible for up to $800 per full-time employee. Businesses who pay at least 150% or $18 per hour are eligible for up to $500 per employee. And there is another category of if you are an HUA, or what we refer to as a high unemployment area, or a SWAM business, you are eligible for that $500 grant at 125% of the minimum wage, which is $15 per hour. We do want to make a note that because minimum wage requirements have been changing over the past few years, positions that were previously eligible in the past may not be eligible to receive a grant in the future or in this upcoming grant cycle if they do not meet those new wage rate thresholds. What are those high unemployment areas? So these are determined through our code and the state unemployment rate. And so these are a list of those high unemployment areas that are eligible in 2025 to apply under the high unemployment area or 125% minimum wage, which is that $15 per hour. You do need to make a note that some of those localities have a joint zone. The joint zones are not eligible. So we have those listed here, which are the zone in addition to the zone number. And then the joint zones that are not eligible are listed in the bottom right. This is available on our website and, of course, in the manual. We also want to make note that if a business was previously in a high unemployment area, I'm trying to think, I think maybe like let's say Dickinson County, if a business had applied from Dickinson County, they were a high unemployment area last year, I'm pretty sure, and they are not listed this year. That company is eligible to apply for their 5-year grant period under that high unemployment area application. So they can continue to apply to receive that 125% minimum wage for the remainder of that 5-year grant period. But all new businesses applying for a JCG in these zones would be at that new 125%. What if are SWAM certified? So in 2021, legislation was passed that allows SWAM certified businesses to be eligible to use that reduced wage threshold as well. So to be eligible for that reduced wage threshold as a SWAM certified company, they have to have been SWAM certified either during calendar year 2025 or before. Something to keep in mind is when you're completing the worksheet, you do need to make sure you're completing the correct worksheet and that you have checked the correct box on the on application, that is the type of application you're doing, either SWAM certified or high unemployment area. And if you're like a local zone administrator or something and you want to take a look at the directory for SWAM certified businesses, you can use this link for that to find those listed businesses. What is the application process? So again, we're now accepting applications for grant year 2025. The business has to have increased employment over their base year by more than at least 4 jobs, kicks in at that 5th job during that calendar year. We also want to make note, as provided in of course, 59.1-547. A CPA attestation is a required component to all job creation grants for applications except when the applicant has a base year employment of less than or equal to 100 permanent full-time positions and the grant eligible positions are less than or equal to 25 permanent full-time positions. If you're unsure about that, please be sure to contact us. We can help you work through that early in the game or early in the application process so that we can help you determine, especially if you're close to that 25 permanent full-time positions. Also want to make note that there are times, because the job creation grant is a 5-year application period, that let's say that your company created, had the less than 100 permanent full-time positions, and in year 1 and 2, their grant eligible positions were less than or equal to that 25. They did not require an attestation. But in year 3, they went over that threshold of grant eligible positions. At that point, the company would be responsible for obtaining a CPA attestation as part of their required application process. This is just a quick example of calculating awards. It is a very simple example. Says that our base year employment was 24 in 2024 was 10 permanent full-time employees. And during the grant year, they added 35 permanent full-time employees. And for simplicity's sake, we are assuming that every one of them are making 150% of minimum wage and that everyone worked or was in the position was available January 1st through December 31st every day. So with those assumptions, you can start with 35 grant year employees because that's where you are now. You subtract that 10 base year employees, subtract the 4 job threshold, which means you're left with 21 grant eligible permanent full-time positions. If you multiply that by $500, then you are eligible for an award of up to $10,500. And correcting myself, grant year employment level was 35, not that you added 35 positions. I may have said that incorrectly a few minutes ago. So again, this is just a very simple example of how that's calculated, but everything is done on a worksheet, which we'll review in just a moment. Do want to remind you that the grant term for the job creation grant is 5 years. What that does mean is that a company can apply, include using that original base year for 5 years, provided they maintain or increase employment every year over that base year, including over that 4 job threshold. So the first year, if you're a new applicant, might be 2025. You could apply for 2025 and then 4 more years. You are eligible to apply for subsequent grant year periods if you are still creating new jobs that are eligible. And for those subsequent grant year periods, you would have a new base year period. All of that is in our manual as well, or we can review that if that is the case. Next, we're going to go over the job creation worksheet. This worksheet, a few pointers. It needs to be filled out left to right, if at all possible, not skipping columns. There are formulas that you should not disturb or change. There are cells that are locked to protect those formulas. We have cells that are hidden. And also one thing, some cells will turn red to signal potential errors. And there are cells that will turn black if ineligible. And so let me show you that. So anyone who has worked with a job creation grant before, you've probably seen this worksheet. I do want to make note, this is the job creation worksheet. There is a separate worksheet if you are using the high unemployment area and or SWAM certified business. It does have an additional column to the right because it includes that 125% minimum wage. So please make sure you are using the correct worksheet. Just to make note, all of the white columns are ones that someone, you and or your CPA is going to enter information. I'll go over that in just a second. And then the colored, the blues, the purples, the yellows. The yellow one, you will enter information as well, provided it has not been blacked out. Okay. Many of the other columns, if they will auto-populate. So in this example, do you want to make sure you understand that you would skip that first or that second column, which is included in the CPA sample attestation process. They are the ones that will put whether that particular employee was included in their sampling. So you're going to put your employee's name. We do ask that you put the employee's name by alphabetical order by last name. And then you're going to include the last four digits. While we say social security number here, it could be the last four digits of an employee ID number, something that you have on hand. We have cases where sometimes the employee ID number is 3 digits. That's fine. You're going to list your base year employees first. So you'll see right here in these columns next, you've got base year, which is either 2024 or 2023, and you're going to list the dates they worked. Okay. If they worked during the grant cycle in 2025, they were still employed, then you're going to list those employee dates as well. You're going to list if you offered them health benefits. In this case, these base year employees, they're not eligible because they are base year employees. So you can see the hourly wage rate column did black out where you do not include their wage rate. Next, under that, you'll see starting with line 9, Jennifer Holland. She started working she was not there during the base year. However, she was during the grant year. And so her dates of employment are listed. In addition to, she was offered health benefits and she received $17 per hour. Next, you'll see Jack Irving is listed twice. Two things to note. One is the reason Jack Irving is highlighted red is because that is signaling a potential error in the worksheet. The potential error is that you listed Jack Irving twice. And so you can see his name and his number is the same. But if you move over to the right, you'll notice that from January 5th to March 5th, he was making $17.50 per hour. But March 6th through December 31st, he was making $16.50 per hour. Now, this is a case where Jack actually, his wage rate went down, which is not usual unless someone might switch from a premium shift, such as third shift, to maybe a first shift. But what this does indicate is you do need to show whenever someone has a wage rate change. So if Jack had a raise, he might have become grant eligible if he were making the $18.50 per hour. So we want to make sure that you are listing those employees multiple times if they do have a wage rate, or for some reason they left and then they came back, and just make sure it's listed with those correct dates. Again, you're listing them as an employee with their in alphabetical order with their last name. You'll notice online, I think it's employee 13, Matthew Klein. For some reason, Matthew was not offered health insurance benefits. So Matthew is not eligible for the grant. So when that N for offered health benefits was shown, then it blacked out automatically. So this worksheet, a lot of times we will tell you to go ahead and save at least one copy, work on it, and then if you need another one, of course, take a look at it, but just work on it slowly and diligently. And that is that's the employer or typically somebody from HR's, the applicant's responsibility to be working on that. Let me go back really quick. You'll see the information under wage classification for net new positions. You'll see some different things such as 12 in those different color columns. That information carries over to this the second worksheet. So there's a sheet 1 and a sheet 2. These values are auto-calculated. You will not change them, but you will be putting them on or in the online application. This is how it's calculated or how your grant is calculated. This is the number of permanent full-time positions filled by the grant year, meeting the wage requirements. Just a couple things for the JCG worksheet. I may have gone over some of those as a reminder, but it does need to be completed. Make sure you're completing the correct worksheet, whether if you are HUA or SWAM eligible. Worksheets calculate grant eligible positions filled during the grant year, and they automatically calculate qualification information. Based on the dates of employment, this worksheet will automatically distribute full months worked at those eligible wage rates. And if a position was not filled for the entire grant year, the prorate amount is based on the number of months employed, and it is automatically calculated. So that's why on that worksheet you might see 6.97, or you might see the full 12, or you might see 8.3. Those are automatically calculated based on the number of days the employee worked. Again, you include all full-time positions for the base year and grant year. Again, all employees filling permanent full-time positions. What you do not include on the worksheet are those positions that are not permanent. They're contracted or seasonal, part-time or as needed. So if they're not full-time, if they are not meeting the report to work requirement, ineligible positions such as food and beverage, retail, personal service, or churn positions. And wage info, of course, needs to be listed for the permanent full-time positions hired after the base year through 12/31/2025. Again, just as a reminder, if an employee is given a raise during the grant year, you're going to list them separately on different lines. We do get questions about salary and wage employees. You're going to divide an employee's annual salary by 1,820 hours. So they have to have worked 1,680 hours or be scheduled for that to qualify. But you can include shift premiums and commissions, but you do not include bonuses or overtime. And this is just a sample calculation if someone has an annual salary of $40,000 and what that conversion rate would be to their hourly rate of $21.98 per hour. And just as a reminder, this is a pretty hardy worksheet. There's a lot of information. So some people do want to print it. There are printing instructions. You'll see it has 3 tabs. The first one's the worksheet we reviewed. The second one is those values that are auto-calculated. And there are printing instructions. Please follow them if you want to make sure, or if you decide you want to print this. I'm going to turn it over to Kate now to continue sharing information.
Thank you, Mandy. Hello, everyone. Let's go to our required materials for the job creation grant. A lot of these are the same as those that are submitted for the real property investment grant. All materials, including the application and the uploaded documents, must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. on April 1st, 2026. I see that change now that we missed there. Those include the Commonwealth of Virginia W-9, the LZA review form, applicant declaration form, the CPA attestation report, if applicable, and then the JCG or JCG HUA SWAM worksheet. We're going to go over all of those materials now. Before we go over each document or the materials necessary, let's go over the JCG applicant responsibilities. The applicant or business firm will provide the CPA with that worksheet that Mandy went over that includes all the employees filling those permanent full-time positions in the base year in alphabetical order, followed by all the employees filling the permanent full-time positions in the grant year in alphabetical order. So failure to provide a completed and accurate list of the employees, the dates employed, and their wage rates may result in an under or overpayment of grant funds. And if there is something like that that happens, then the Commonwealth will require the grantee to return an overpayment. You also must provide information about employees receiving raises or even decreases in pay during the grant year, and that must be listed on a separate line for each wage fluctuation. And Mandy went over that as well. So you cannot use an average wage rate, but you would list the employee's name and then the dates in which they received the one salary or pay, and then you would do it again, their name, the dates, and then the time they received the next salary or pay. You must provide all of the A9s and pay stubs, payroll records indicating the first work date, last work date, and wage rates in the base year and grant year for each employee that's listed on that worksheet. You have to provide health benefits documentation. That includes any of those written benefit waivers that have been signed by the employees. And the business firm representatives must provide their signature on the applicant declaration form, verifying that there are no retail, food or beverage, or personal service positions on the worksheet. All employees listed are permanent full-time employees that have not been churned from another location, which means moved from one location or to another within the Commonwealth of Virginia, and all employees listed on the worksheet, both grant and base year, meet the report to work requirement. And of course, we can have a company apply for JCGs that moved from one locality to another, but those positions that moved from one locality to another do not count as new positions. Those would be part of your base year. The first required document is the Commonwealth of Virginia Form W-9. It's very important that you're submitting the Commonwealth of Virginia form and not the IRS Department of Treasury W-9. This is what that W-9 looks like that you are to submit. You'll see it has the Virginia seal in the right hand corner. It says Form W-9 Commonwealth of Virginia on the left hand corner, and you must complete all of the highlighted sections. So that's the entire form except for the two boxes on the top right that say exemptions. And we're going to go over the form in more detail now. You must provide either your Social Security number or your FEIN. That unique entity identifier is not required for our grant purposes. You would provide the FEIN if the applicant is an LLC, a partnership, a corporation, or an S Corp. You only need to provide the Social Security number instead of the FEIN if the applicant is an individual or sole proprietor. You'll see on the form on your screen that for entity types, you do have the ability to select disregarded entity when you're filling out the W-9. For our purposes, when you're applying for a grant, that is the RPIC or the JCG, you should never have disregarded entity checked as the taxpayer entity type because disregarded entities cannot pay taxes. So in this case, if the company that is applying is a disregarded entity, then a W-9 should be submitted for the company or the individual that is actually capitalizing on the investment. So you utilize the legal name and the FEIN of the parent company or the taxable entity, and you note the name of the disregarded entity on the W-9. You will see that there is a section for the legal address and the remittance address. Often these are two separate addresses. That remittance address may be different and it must be completed. The remittance address is where the company wants to receive their grant funds. Those funds are usually sent by paper check in the mail to this remittance address. However, if you've already done business with the Commonwealth of Virginia for other reasons, then you may receive your payment through EFT, but all of the information in the form must still be completed. And you would not believe how many times we have folks reach out to us after we tell them that we've sent out the checks to say that they haven't received theirs. And a lot of times it's because this remittance address is not filled out correctly or doesn't have the right address. And so it's very important that you check to make sure that that's correct and where you want to receive your funds. Also, another thing that's important with the W-9 is that you print and sign the name of the contact person that's listed above in the W-9. In past years, we were able to utilize W-9s from previous years. Let's say you're a job creation grant recipient and you got a job creation grant last year. You have either maintained or increased the number of eligible employees. So you are applying for your second year. You cannot just use the same W-9 that you used the previous year. You must have one that has the signature dated with 2026. And for the signature options, we allow for those documents to be physically signed, scanned, and uploaded, or a digital or electronic signature with approved vendors, including both DocuSign and Adobe Signature. The next form is the applicant declaration form. This is a requirement for all job creation grant applications. On this first page, the first section is to be completed by the zone investor or the grant applicant. It includes the contact information and email for the main contact of the application or the grant. This is who we'll reach out to if we have any discrepancies or questions. When we are reviewing the grants, each grant gets reviewed twice, at least twice. And then if we see anything that's missing or something that's not correct, we will reach out to the applicant and the CPA to get that information corrected so that we can move your grant forward with approval. The next section in that form is the narrative summary. When we are looking at the grants, you can imagine that we're just seeing numbers and pieces of information here and there on every application and form. The narrative summary really gives us a better idea of what your project was. You can list the building use and the owner, a summary of the work completed, and any like end goals, end use, the timeline of the project. Any information you can give us to give us a better idea of the project as a whole would be great in this section. The back part of this form is for the CPA to check that they've done everything that's needed. And for the JCG applicants, you'll see the box on the middle right. It's ensuring that you have submitted a worksheet and that if not applicable, you would submit it there. You would check that there. You are also going to be required to sign that applicant declaration form. That is saying that you're declaring that you've made the management decisions necessary to complete the entire application and that the application is accurate. You've disclosed all the documentation and information necessary to the CPA, and you're signing on behalf of the zone investor and/or applicant. The second required document, actually this is the third, is the local zone administrator review form. The local zone administrator is the locality's contact for the enterprise zone. As a partnership between state and local governments, that local zone administrator is usually the economic development person in the locality. Sometimes it's the county administrator, town manager, but that LZA is going to help you fill out this form. The top part of the form is your contact information, and you'll notice that part of that is the property identification number. We get a lot of questions about this. That is referred to as different things in different localities. Some localities call it a tax ID or parcel ID or property ID. It has many different names, but you can reach out to your LZA to help you find that number for your specific property. The second part of the form is completed by the LZA. They'll put in the zone name and number and designation date. And what they are doing is they are checking to make sure that your property for which you're applying, where you've created those jobs for this grant, is within the boundaries of the enterprise zone. They're checking that off on this form, and they are signing and dating it to ensure that they have done so. So now that we've gone over those forms that you're going to upload in part of the application submission online, let's go over the actual application online itself and see what those parts look like. So Easy JCG is submitted online. Mandy might have already said this once, but a sample application can be found on the application portal. You want to use that sample application, print it out, fill it out. You can fill it out by hand or on the computer, however you please. But you want to do that because unfortunately with our application submission, you can't start submitting the information and save it and come back to it. So you have to submit it all at once. So you want to have all of that information ready and at your disposal to submit all at one time. One really important thing about filling out the information for the job creation grant is number 7 of part 1. You have to select your type of application. You have to select whether it's a standard job creation grant. That means it's not in a high unemployment area and you're not applying as a SWAM certified business. Then you're going to select standard. If you're applying in a high unemployment area, you would select that. And if you're a SWAM certified business, you would select that here. This is important because it's going to affect the formulas that are used in the application, because those high unemployment areas and those SWAM certified businesses can be eligible at a lower wage rate or an adjusted wage rate. It's also going to affect which worksheet you're going to upload. So it's really important that you get that correct on number 7. In part 1, you're filling out all of the background information about the applicant and the applicant company. And then also you're filling in that zone information from number 11 to number 14. Number 15 has the information of the grant applicant representative. Again, that's who we're going to reach out to. If we find any discrepancies or issues with the application, we'll reach out to that person to help get those fixed. Part 2 is your qualification info. You'll see that number 1 is a reminder that we are accepting grants for calendar year 2025. That's for new jobs created in 2025. You're going to check your year of qualification. If this is your first year applying for a job creation grant, you would select year 1 and then so forth. Number 3 is that you're going to enter your basic calendar year that you used for your calculations. So for grant year 2025, which is the grant year that we're in, you can use either 2024 or 2023 as your base year. You're going to put that number in number 3. That base year calendar information, that number or year is going to stay the same every year that you apply, because that's the number of employees that you started with before you added the new employees for which you're applying. Number 4 is where all of the numbers for your employees come in. It does have a note to ensure that you do not include any of those retail, food and beverage, or personal service employees. 4A is the number of all of your equivalent PFTPs, that's your permanent full-time positions, filled by the firm during the base year. So that's that 2023, 2024 number of employees that you had, and that's going to stay the same every year that you apply. B is the number of equivalent permanent full-time employees filled by the firm during the grant year. C, what was the increase in the number of the equivalent employees created over the base year? So you're going to subtract line A from line B. And then D is the new jobs created over that 4-job net new threshold. So because we have that 4-job threshold, you're subtracting that from line C, and you're going to get the number of jobs created over the threshold. And that's going to be auto-calculated for you online. Part 2 is more qualification information. If it is a standard JCG app or an HUA or SWAM app, it's going to look a little different because those HUA and SWAM applications can qualify at the lower wage rate levels. So that's why it's important at the beginning of the application that you select the correct type of app for which you're applying. So number 5 is the number of new eligible permanent full-time employees in the grant year earning at least 175% of that minimum wage and offered healthcare benefits. That's B5 on your worksheet. This can be found on that second page of your JCG worksheet. These are those numbers that are auto-calculated for you on your worksheet. So you put in all of that information about the employees, the dates they worked, and their wages, and then this information is calculated for you on the second sheet of your worksheet. And it looks very similar with the HUA or SWAM apps. It's just at different levels because the HUA and SWAM apps qualify at 125% of the minimum wage instead of the minimum of the 150% of the minimum wage. Number 6 is the grant request information. So you're going to enter the requested award amount for 175% of the minimum wage, and then 125% of the minimum wage. That would be 150% of the minimum wage if it was a standard application. It's going to look a little different again from the standard application to the HUA SWAM application. And then C is the total amount of job creation grants requested. All of this information can be found in the worksheet. So that's why the worksheet is really important to fill out correctly. Number 7 states that the attached worksheet, including the formulas supplied by DHCD, has been attached, and that you're certifying that the information in the worksheet is correct to the best of your knowledge. No retail, food, beverage, or personal service positions are listed on the worksheet. All employees are permanent full-time positions, have not been churned from another locality within the Commonwealth, and all employees listed on the worksheet, both grant and base year, meet that report to work requirement. And that's where you would check that box. Part 3 is that CPA information. We will reach out to the CPA if there are any discrepancies when we are checking and reviewing those grants to help get more information. And then finally, you have the section with the uploaded documents. You can see the documents with the red asterisk are requirements. That's your applicant declaration form, Commonwealth of Virginia Form W-9, the worksheets, the LZA review form. The worksheets, you must upload the Excel version. Don't save it as a PDF and upload the PDF. All of the documents must not be password protected, and they must be uploaded separately. We cannot accept one large PDF with all of the documents scanned as one. That's very important. If your project required a CPA attestation, then this is also where you would upload that document. So let's go over that CPA attestation a little bit. The attestation requirement is waived if a firm has a base year employment of 100 or fewer positions and creates 25 or fewer grant eligible positions. So those firms that started with smaller numbers and are adding smaller numbers do not within that range. 100 or fewer base year and 25 or fewer grant eligible positions are exempt from the attestation. That eligibility of exemption is determined every year. So you might be exempt one year, but if you are over that base year amount or that grant year amount for exemption the following year, you will not be exempt. So firms must still complete that JCG worksheet and submit it to DHCD for review, even if you're exempt from the CPA requirement. And staff will monitor each firm who is able to waive the attestation annually using the procedures in the CPA attestation manual. That was a lot of information about our job creation grant. We are happy to take your questions now. You can put them in the chat typed. You can raise your hand and we will call on you, and then you can unmute yourself for the questions. As a reminder, while you're thinking of your questions, we'll be sending out a recording of this webinar to all registrants, along with links to the job creation grant manual where you can find all of this information. As Tori said at the beginning of the presentation, we will be having office hours where you can jump on a meeting just like this and ask us questions, and we'll be happy to answer them. And we're always available by email or phone call to talk and help you with your application as well. Mandy put the eZone account email address in the chat. Feel free to copy and paste that. And what questions do you have at this time about the job creation grant? I'm not seeing any questions yet. I will say that sometimes once people start working on the worksheet, they might feel overwhelmed. Mandy and I are happy to help with the worksheet. Once you get into it and you start seeing how it works, it starts to make a little bit more sense when you're putting, real people that into the worksheet and getting an idea of when they worked and the months and the wages. It helps. It's a little easier. I see a question in the chat. It says, what is the time period until you find out you were approved after your application is submitted? From Carrie. Great question, Carrie. So we will be reviewing the applications in April, and the first part of May, and then we send those over with our approvals and our request for the grant funds. We send them to our finance department, and then they send them off to the Commonwealth of Virginia department. You would receive your check in June. So this year in June, a few months after you, sometimes it's July. Tori shook his head. It's more like July. Okay, thank you. Yes, let me be more accurate. July, expected in July. But we do let you know via email, the email that you provide us for contact, that your grant has been approved and that you should receive that information. So you'll know when to look out for it. And we're in contact with you during the grant process, letting you know if there's any discrepancies that need to be fixed as well. What other questions do you have? I don't see any hands raised. Can the owner,
Go ahead, Kate.
Can the owner of the business be considered one of the full-time employees? Yes, yes, they can be. They would be, yes. Good question. What other questions do you all have? Our next presentation is at 1, and that's for the CPA requirements. I see another question. Is there a maximum number of new positions you can report? Yes, there is. That maximum number is 350. Other questions? You're welcome. All of this information can be found online. We're going to send out a link to this webinar and to the information to all of you. We thank you for your time coming to our webinar today. We hope that you got your questions answered and were able to learn more about the grant, and we're here to help you however we can. Feel free to reach out, and we hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks.